Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 137 of Two Amazon Sellers and a Microphone, brought to you by Solozo. And today, Chris and I are really excited. We've got the legend on with us.
The man himself.
The man.
I can't wait to meet him.
Yeah, that's right. Brian R. Johnson from Canopy Management is joining us. How you doing, Brian?
Fantastic. Chris, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Oh, well, we're really excited. I feel like we could talk about anything possible Amazon, and this would just be such
a
good conversation for hours and hours and hours, for sure. But we want to, in a little while, we're going to talk about our main topic is standing out from the competition, which I cannot wait to hear your thoughts on that. So we're excited about that. But for anybody who's watching us right now and they don't know you, I don't know how they would not know you, but if they don't know you or they haven't seen your great content or what you do at Canopy Management, you got the floor. Give us a background, just sort of how you got into all this.
Absolutely. No, honestly, frankly, I don't need the attention. My wife teases me too much about it sometimes, but and frankly, if there's people who don't know me, that is even better for me, because that means I'm reaching people I haven't before. Mm-hmm. So as far as my background, here's kind of the shorter version. So I've been in e-commerce for about 14 years now, the last 7 in the Amazon space. Like yourselves, innovation from a software standpoint, putting out the first PPC software back in the old school days of software there for Amazon. First professional Amazon advertising training course. Not the first advertising agency, although Canopy Management has grown phenomenally well over the last 3 years. And I'm most known for advertising. In fact, in my career, I've helped grow, I like this number now, so I'm throwing it out there these days, I've helped brands grow, over 20,000 brands grow over $1 billion with a B in my career. So I'm extremely proud of that, mostly because I've helped a lot of people. In fact, I've created a lot of my own competition too. So I like the impact that I've had, and I want to do more. And so that's kind of where today's topic came up, was standing out. Obviously, we'll get into that, but it's just more of my passion focus. In other words, most people know me for Amazon advertising and DSP, but this one I feel is critical that most brands are failing on this year. So I want to get that message out there.
Well, with numbers like that, you definitely got to share them. I mean, that's amazing.
Oh, yeah. Yes, those are absolutely impressive numbers. That's why we called you the legend when you came on, because that is impressive. You mentioned that you've been in e-commerce for 14 years, but only the last 7 in Amazon. What was your entry into e-commerce?
I was I've always been a weekend entrepreneur. Just didn't know it until I finally did it full time. But when I first went full time and with e-commerce, I was selling on eBay. So eBay was my platform, and I had all kinds of awesome awards from beating myself up with low margins for years on that one. But primarily, I'd started out. In fact, I did a show just recently with a network of pawn shops, and so we were able to actually talk shop from my old days of how you source things from, like, you go to like businesses being liquidated and storage auctions and all kinds of junk where you're just like reselling stuff, and it is a hard grind. It's kind of like arbitrage. Just like no, thank you. But I shifted over to drop shipping from several brands that manufactured money, like banking equipment, like money counters, coin sorters, fraud detectors. And so that became my niche for another 5 years, I suppose, on eBay. But the margins were always low. I was always running like 12 to 15% net margin. So if anything ever went wrong, it was gone. And so then I got the siren call from some friends who pulled me over to the Amazon side of the house. And I started out, when was it? I guess it's 2014, because it was during ASM2, Amazing Selling Machine 2. And so I had rolled out my first product, and I was feeling pretty proud about its growth. And then I don't know if you remember Jason Flalian. He was up on stage at Amazing 2 conference in Austin, And he was saying, he goes, look how easy it is to take over these product niches. Here's an example. And he puts up my direct competitor. Within 3 months, I had 40 new competitors. Just wiped me out. Now, I, of course, like yourselves, like I innovated. I said, it's like, okay, that's not going to stop me. I just need to come up with a better product. I enhanced that product. I sold that for a while. And then within 2 months, everybody copied what I had done there. So obviously I was recognizing a pattern early on is like, if you don't keep moving, you're dead. you're either moving forward or you're moving backwards. There's no maintenance in the middle. So
yeah, you got to keep moving in this game. I mean, you can't just stay stagnant.
Yeah, we talk about that all the time because Chris and I started in 2014 as well, and we were similar. I mean, we had kind of hustling around doing arbitrage and flipping things on eBay.
I still go to garage sales.
Oh yeah, it's still
fun. The game is still fun, but I wouldn't do it as a business.
No, but it certainly is. It did teach you all the stuff to prepare you to go like private label. I feel like for us, like right. You're in the trenches with it and you understand the systems. Yeah. But now, I mean, it was obviously pretty easy to launch a product in 2014. And I think,
yeah, it was, I mean, if you look back on it, I mean, it was obnoxiously easy, as in like, it's frustrating to look back and say, it's like, if I knew what I know now back then, you can say that about anything in life, right? It's like, man, I would have just been a monster on Amazon. But I always continue to fight in the trenches, and you can't always be the first one with an idea, but you have to be able to willing to learn from people around you. And even, I learn constantly from people. I love meeting new people who have got new ideas, who directly oppose what I teach, for instance. I'm cool with that because to me, that's challenging me and keeping me on my game. So as a seller, as a brand, you should absolutely be doing the same.
I agree. That's why we absolutely love doing this podcast, is because we're talking to people all the time that are in the trenches, and you learn new ideas, new concepts, something you wouldn't have, maybe something you disagree with. I think in the advertising space, I mean, the best practices change so much. I feel like, and it's, you want to be staying on top of it for sure. But also this, the way the Amazon is now and the level of competition makes what we're talking about now so important. The standing out from the competition, that needs to be a focus for a lot of sellers right now.
It does, yeah. This is something that, and this is something that, of course, we do in-house with my own agency. This is something that I actually do coaching on. But there's such a massive, I wouldn't say it's almost blue ocean opportunity. In other words, there's enough people who have, I commend the authors, the coaches, the course creators for having gotten their message out so well that most private label sellers that are selling on Amazon are basically, they all look alike. They've mimicked each other. They've looked at that model and said, it's like, okay, find somebody successful and then copy them. Well, that's what everybody did. That's an example of, kind of what I was saying, like, when Jason, put up my competitor product on stage, in front of 1,000 people, and you get 40 out of 1,000 who can't come up with a better idea than to copy what was stated on stage. I'm like, that's some sheep going on, right? But at the same time, what that has created is it does create success for people because they're like going, great, I'm emulating what is working. I'm using the tools that everybody's using. You end up with the same product. You end up with the same experience from a shopper. And the shopper, kind of like the old, the old banner blindness days from Google Ads, is shoppers, the more they see something, the less they see it. In other words, they see it so frequently that after a while, they just kind of go blind. And these days with, with our mobile phones and how bad our attention deficit is, and instant gratification is, that we're scrolling through, whether we're on a desktop or a mobile, we're just scrolling through. Half the time, we're not even paying attention to what we're looking at. We have to go back and look. It's like, what did I just miss?
It's such a good point.
We're all over the place.
It's such a good point. And when people copy, I mean, that's when I launched my product in 2014. By 2017, 18, there was like 500 of the exact same product. They're using the same pictures of mine. And you see that all the time now. And I don't know what it is, why people who get into this space, it's like they gravitate towards like the same small segment of products. Like they're all trying to source those same ones and launch those same ones. It's
because
interesting.
it works. The tools say here's a hot niche, and then everybody says like, oh, okay.
Uh-huh.
Sounds like a great idea. How many people got that same message?
Yeah, it's like garlic presses back in the day. Everyone taught
it
that
was a joke, but people are going like, I'm going to source garlic presses because that seems to be the hot item. It's like, yeah, okay. Sure, why don't you
it was hilarious.
Stuff,
It's like nobody could get that out of their head. They're looking for stuff and they just keep coming back to that garlic press because they heard it like 5,000 times.
Yeah, it became the Kleenex analogy.
Exactly. It's so funny. So let's dive into this now. I mean, I'm really fascinated because you do a lot of outside the box thinking, and the standing out from the crowd or standing out from the competition means you're doing things different from everybody else.
Yes.
So would love, cannot wait. I feel like we're going to go down a rabbit hole here, but I'm super excited. So talk about some of the things that you mean by that.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me kind of like frame what the problem here. Of course, the problem that we have is that there's a balance that the brands are trying to make on Amazon between being indexed, being seen by Amazon, and being seen by the shopper. The problem is that a lot of the training that they followed is outdated. It's based off of principles as far as like, okay, you need to treat Amazon like a search engine. You need to tell it what you're selling. And anybody who's in the machine learning space knows that, especially on a platform as big as Amazon is, they figured it out a long time ago what you're selling. They don't really need your help. Frankly, they don't need you to even put the search phrase in your title anymore. However, I still recommend you do that. But most sellers are still like, they're looking at it like, oh, listing optimization is keyword SEO. In other words, I need to make sure that I'm putting in all my phrases I'm trying to target throughout my content. And originally I taught the same kind of thing. That was standard SEO practice for a search engine, whether it was Google or Amazon. But the problem we get is that when you have everybody who follows the same marching orders, who puts out the same kind of look, everybody mimics each other from an image standpoint, from a title standpoint, from a bullet standpoint, and they're using, God forbid, they've got a description that still says add to cart, on it, from what was that, 5-6 years ago?
Yeah.
They were teaching that. It's no wonder that shoppers have to gravitate toward what is Amazon showing as far as ads up on top, or a moving video ad, or that's one of the reasons why Amazon shifted over things as far as like editorial recommendations and bestseller badge and some of these things, is because they know that people, they don't want to make a decision. They just want to say like, here's the best one, here's the most popular one, go for it. Obviously that creates a lot of manipulation in the marketplace too. Yeah. But there's a much better way of doing that, and that's something that I coach on, that my agency has, a separate service that we all do it in-house, of course, that includes advanced listing optimization, which is essentially doing it different than everybody else's SEO keyword optimization. So what we're trying to do on that, I'll kind of rephrase this a little bit. So what we're trying to do on this is we're trying to accomplish three things. One is we need to stand out. We need to have our main image stand out in the search results from the competition, right? So that it catches the eye of the shopper. Second is we need to grab the attention and the curiosity of the shopper in the title in order to make sure that we're actually like hooking them a little bit in order to gain their curiosity, to pull them away from the competition they're surrounded by, pull them into the product listing. And then once in the product listing, in little nuggets of, little 5-second nuggets between the images and the bullet points, we're expressing to them, we're basically answering the question, what's in it for me if I buy this product? Why do I care? I don't care about your specifications or your features. Like, what does that do for me? What's the benefit to me? And that can be done as long as certain rules are applied, like my 5-second rule, which you'll hear again, of making sure that you're communicating to the shopper not to the search engine. So you communicate to the shopper, and you're creating a conversation with them. Not a big story. You're not writing paragraphs and pages of content. You're trying to just connect with the shopper and make them realize, like, oh, here's a company that understands my pain, has a solution, and this is what I'm going to get out of it. If you make them work for it, make a shopper work to understand what your product is going to do for me, you've blown it.
Mm-hmm. I'm fascinated by this conversation, and I like the way you laid it out, because what I think a lot of times when sellers like us are building their listings, you forget that you've got to get them to your listing, and the image and the title have to be intriguing enough for them to go. They won't even see the rest of it unless they get there. So it doesn't matter how good your content is on the rest of it if it doesn't go. And so how are you taking, like, what can you do to an image? Like, if you're selling a product that's it is what it is, like it's a pen or it's a cup or something, how does that, what kind of things can you do to that main image to make it different from everybody else?
So fortunately, Amazon, there's two things on this. So Amazon, of course, has its own Amazon Experiments A/B split testing for main image.
Mm-hmm.
Before they decided to shut down, Splitly would be an option, for instance. But they're on their way out, I guess. One of the things that we did is we had actually built, I built it. This is even outside my own agency, because I'm a researcher. And so I do a whole lot of research and development. I put my own money behind some of these things. And I've had my own research staff even outside of Canopy. And so we actually built a system that uses like micro workers who are based in the US. And we'll go out and we'll say, okay, here's a selection of images from a search result. And it's just the images. And we'll send it out to 1,000 of these, and we'll basically have them vote as far as, like, okay, which image caught your attention and then why. And we break that down just from the image standpoint. We also do it for titles and words and these kinds of things. But the image one was the most interesting, the most pressing for us. And consistently what we saw, we did, I don't know, 30 to 40 of these tests in different niches. And it kept on coming back to the same thing. Of course, motion would definitely catch people's attention. If Amazon ever decides to have some kind of a animated GIF or motion on the main image, that's going to be a game changer for those who implement it right away. And then it's going to get lost when everybody does it. But things like sponsor brand video ads, if it comes up on the search result, if they see it right away, then the sponsor brand video ad typically catches their attention as long as it's motion, and then it gives them, hooks them, right? And that's where I see most brands, they fail at their sponsor brand video ad, simply because they just don't recognize, here's the context of how people are seeing it. You got to hook them first. You can't just say, like, hey, come home with me. I mean,
it doesn't work that
way anymore. But one of the things that some of the things we found, we basically took, here's the top 10 things that seem to be most eye-catching, that grab the attention of the shopper. Not like, hey, I find this interesting, I find it relevant. No. What simply caught the eye of the people that we polled? Again, per experiment, we had, usually it's between 500 to 1,000 responses. And the biggest thing that we saw that stood out the most, that was the outlier, was bright, sharp colors, like red, green, blue, right? Now, it was always in context in that, like, is everybody on the page got bright green, red, blue? Then it's not going to stand out. But if you're the one that has that bright color in your main image, then it's going to stand out. So that was the biggest thing, is like a bright color just draws the eye of a human, right? But again, all of these depend on how does it compare to what the competition is doing. Are you doing the opposite of what the competition is doing so that you stand out? It's the not quite the Where's Waldo, but it's more like, what's wrong with this picture? Where shoppers, the brain is just wired that way. It's like, wait a minute, something's off about this. What is it? And their eye goes to it. You're trying to recreate that same kind of effect, because if everybody, especially if there's a common theme, and some niches are like, oh my gosh, it's like, wow, does nobody have a creative, thought of their own as far as creating their own image? Here's an example on this, because we also saw where things like white space versus clutter also made a difference. Again, it had to do with, does it stand out? Is it different than what everybody else is having in the search results as far as your competitors? Here's an example on this. I created a video on my YouTube channel just recently about this, and it was gosh, what was it? It was like a birthday cake decorating kit, I think it was. And so everybody had, they're saying it's like, oh, this is a 30 piece, this is a 70 piece, and their main image would be just stuffed, and so it's like they're like trying to show you, like, here's all the things I have. Back to that earlier dating analogy, I guess, the bar scene. It's kind of like coming up and saying, it's like, oh, here's all my credit cards, here's a picture of my phone, like whoa, back off, and so it's you're trying to sell it too much on the very first impression, and instead of grabbing their attention. So what I usually recommend is like, no. If everybody else has like 50 accessories, or even 10 or 5 accessories that are all stuffed on the main image, remove all of your other accessories. Go with one main item, and then maybe have something trailing off in the distance, but create a bunch of white space instead of a bunch of clutter. You're going to catch your eye. If you do a search on Amazon in your product niche, you're probably going to see where there's some consistent patterns with the main image. And your job is to do the opposite, whether that is to introduce a color. If everybody has packaging in the background, be the one who doesn't have packaging, it just has the product. If everybody has a bunch of accessories that are stuffed into the main image, be the one that has a whole bunch of white space that stands out from the competition. If everybody has their product pointing to the left, point it to the right. Turn it upside down if you have to, if that makes sense. So those are just kind of a sample of like some of the ones that stood out the most, was color and white space, and just like, okay, what's wrong with this picture? Something's not right. Again, it has to do with, does your main image, is it substantially different from everybody else's, that it draws the eye of the shopper when they're scrolling through, mindlessly or blindly?
What other flow like do you have for the main image? Like, what story are you telling as you go from main image to like secondary image to third image? Like, are you going lifestyle first? Like, what kind of good flow do you see working the best?
That's a great question. So typically, as far as like these first 2 pieces here, there's basically 3 rules there are 3 checks that I go through. One is the search results, right? Before they even get to your product detail page, which is a great question on that. But just on the search results, you're trying to, first and foremost, have Amazon show you, whether that is a sponsored ad or an organic listing. You've got to show up in the first place, right? You've got to have relevancy. Second is, then you have to grab the eye of the shopper. Most shoppers are driven by the image. They stop and they pause. All you need to do is get them to just pause for half a second on your image, and you might actually grab their attention with your title secondary. So it's going to roll over to, let's assume we grab their attention by being different than everybody else on the main image. Then they take a second to look at the title. Keep in mind, like, I don't have a problem having a 250 character title, but the first 80 characters is what shows up on a mobile app. So make sure whatever messaging you've got, in order to hook a person, a 3-word benefit, using terminology that nobody else is using, highlighting something that might be special about your product or that nobody else has mentioned about their product. Even if you sell the exact same thing as everybody else, you can probably mention something that nobody else has pointed out in the first 80 characters. That usually creates the curiosity hook. There's a lot of different ways you can do that with a title, but you're trying to basically get their interest enough to say, like, wait a minute, why is this product? And because this is the main challenge we run into, is I want the products that I go through this process to be the most expensive, or one of the most expensive products. Increases margin. You can increase, you can have your product $20 more. I'm not a fan of reducing price. I'm a fan of increasing the price, because you've grabbed the attention of the shopper and you're actually getting those sessions. You're getting that engagement. Now, to your question, Chris, once you're into the product listing, you've got just a few seconds to hook them again, right? They've already looked at your title. They might look at the rest of your title, but more than likely, they're going to start looking at your first bullet point or additional images. That's usually the typical pattern of a shopper. The bullet points, each one, the way that I change those around is I grab them with a very succinct, like 3 to 5 word benefit statement. What's in it for me? What's the most compelling thing that's in it for me if I buy this product? And then I might have a hyphen and then maybe 3 to 5 words of a feature a single feature that supports that benefit. I don't write paragraphs. I don't tell a story. I don't try to romance them. I just say like, look, I'm trying to hit those emotional hooks to keep them on the page long enough for them to see the rest of my story here, right? I will get to the whole like, hey, we're a great brand and we do things, differently and these kinds of things. You're never going to get them to stay on the page long enough unless you hook them. And so the bullet points have got to be driven by answering the question right up front of what's in it for me. And they've got to be able to be read and understood in 5 seconds or less, or else they lose it. They move on. They don't have that kind of attention span. The same thing with the image on each of the images. Pretty much every brand. Actually, there's one brand that actually gets this right every time, and I partnered with them. They actually understood. They got it right, and they do a phenomenal business. But anyway, so the images, again, it's kind of like that main image where they're trying to stuff too much. They're trying to put in like, here's the 15 top benefits of my product in text. Are you kidding me? It's like they're not going to get past the first 3 or 4 of those. So I would much rather see an image that comes in and again hooks them on the secondary images that says like, look, here's the top 3 or 4 benefits to you or compelling features that make your product stand out, and you use some kind of an image photo, even if it's 4 photos on that one image, that can quickly be absorbed and understood as a benefit to the shopper. Don't make them work for it. Don't make them read your text. They're not going to. They're going to keep moving right along. You can do that you can go more detail on some of the later images. I see that in the supplement niche quite a bit, is that they'll use a tactic that worked, years ago. And that is, well, Amazon requires me to show my bottle and my ingredients, and they just take a picture of the bottle and that's their image. Like, really? Like, you're just having me just read the bottle. It's like, no, they're not emphasizing anything. They're not focusing the eyes on something. They've got like, here's the ingredient label, but then here's all this other stuff around it that you can't really read unless you zoom in. It's distracting. It's annoying to most shoppers. Maybe not annoying, but they simply it's too much information. And you're not getting across to them as like, what is it about my product that stands out from competitors? And that's usually kind of a hard one. There's something that I like doing that I recommend to my coaching students, and that is go back to your manufacturer. Even if you sell the exact same product from the exact same manufacturer that everybody else sells, it's got the same features, same price point, everything is identical, let's say. Go back to your manufacturer and ask 2 questions. What's the most expensive step in the manufacturing process? What's the most time-consuming step in this manufacturing process? 90% of the time, your competitors haven't pointed that out. Not that it costs more or it takes more, but there's a reason it was done. And you translate that into, we provide, longer lasting, it's, maybe the reason that it takes longer in the coloring step is because if you don't bake it long enough, then the color fades in the sun. Is anybody else pointing out the fact that this thing's going to not like fade in the sun over a long period of time? That's a benefit that a lot of people would appreciate.
It goes back to that emotion.
Because your competition is not pointing out themselves. Be the one that points it out.
Yeah. That's a good tip there. That's a really good tip. And that's just like so easy to do. Like, just talk to your manufacturer, find out, and then you're playing on that emotion again. When somebody comes to your listing, you're tugging on those heartstrings a little bit and showing that you've taken the time to let it dry so it doesn't fade or whatever it is. And people probably appreciate that.
Yeah, and what you're saying there, Chris, is absolutely true. Is that shoppers are not stupid, right? Yeah. They understand. It's like, do you actually care about me to have taken the time to actually speak my language? Yes or no? Are you giving me the manufacturer specifications that I can get anywhere? Or are you telling me something I don't know? That's going to tell me whether or not you actually know your product well enough to have looked out for my best interest. Because if you start telling me some things that's like, wow, I totally need that and I didn't consider that, or this product seems like it took a consideration, I wonder what else they did. It's kind of like when you build a house and you start finding mistakes in the way that something was built or assembled. You start looking for more mistakes, right? Same thing happens on a product listing. It can go either direction for you. They're either going to start looking if they start looking for mistakes, you've already lost them. They've bounced. They've moved on to somebody else. But if you're actually speaking to the consumer, they're going to be like, "Wow, they get me."
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to assume that other things about this product are in line with what I want. They start trusting you more.
My wife and I were shopping the other day and just came across this exact thing. We were looking for a new umbrella for our table on our patio outside, and we specifically were getting one because the old one faded. The color faded and it looked terrible. And we're looking, and there was only a few that highlighted the fact that their colors don't fade. And there's a million umbrellas for patio tables on Amazon, and they got us. I mean, we wanted that one because they specifically went to it. And from the flip side, going back to a seller, I think, and when creating our listings, I think we get so worried about making sure all the features are in there that we don't tell the story about the benefits. Because your main theme, and Chris pointed out, it just keeps coming back to emotion and like, why would I want to buy this? And I think a lot of times we don't do a good enough job of speaking directly to the customer about what we're solving, what this product is solving for them.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, it's not like I'm trying to avoid. I want to make one clarification, because I usually do get this question as well, is, yeah, but what about the keywords I'm targeting? I'm trying to get indexed. Where do I put those? You can still put those into your title after the first 80 characters. You can still put those into your fourth and fifth bullet points. You can still put those into your description and your A+ content. And your backend search terms. You can still embed them in places, but don't make it the focus because it's obvious. Right. Shoppers pick up on things. I'm a stickler for spelling, and so if I see bad English and bad spelling in a listing, I start immediately starting to dismiss the seller. Now,
well, you mentioned it earlier.
My problem, right? That's on me because I'm the one who's being dismissive. But if I am anything like a typical shopper, I start looking around for something that's going to align with what I value.
Mm-hmm.
And a confused shopper, you've already lost them. Like if you confuse them, we were looking at a listing the other day, Dustin and I.
Out in confusion. Yep.
I was so confused. Like they were trying to tell me something in the bullets, and it was just choppy. Like it was keyword stuffed.
Yeah.
I was like, this is like, it gives me anxiety. Like I gotta get out of this.
Well, here's what I tell you, Chris. So this is actually there's a slippery slope to this, because when I started doing this and I started doing it well, and I just got my head wrapped around it, and I just became passionate on this as a prerequisite to advertising. Most people are like, oh yeah, Brian's going to talk about advertising. I'm going, nope. I'm like, you got to solve a different problem first. And they're like, well, hold on, what? Yes, absolutely. Because, most people have seen, is that the advertising is going up, and there's a lot of reasons why the cost of advertising have gone up recently. But there's a solve, and most brands are not willing to do it. So if you are the one willing to do this extra little bit of work, you're going to have a competitive advantage probably for at least 6 months, if not 2 years. As much as I want to get the message out, I can go into any niche right now and I can pick it apart and say, like, I know exactly how I'm going to take down this niche. If I want to enter this market, if I've got a client, if it's my own product line, I know exactly how I can take over this niche, simply because of the mistakes that are left behind by competitors. I hear so many times where people are like, well, it's saturated and it's too hard and everything. It's like, no, like this is a new opportunity because everybody has followed the same script, and it created a brand new opportunity, and very few are doing it, let alone doing it. It's not just optimization, is this kind of advanced listing optimization is kind of what I would call it.
Yeah.
That's what I love is like looking at listings and trying to figure out how to do it differently from everybody else that's doing it. Like you guys probably do too. When people come on and they want to talk about advertising, we like, first thing you got to do, you got to have a good listing. If your listing sucks, you're going to blame us or you're going to blame Amazon that PPC did not work for you. But sometimes you got to look at your listing. And so that's what's fun is like going to look at a niche and like the supplement niche you mentioned. Everybody shows a bottle, right? I was working with the client and she had an image where like she's pouring the supplements out. And it was like a main image, like pouring it out. I was like, make that your main image. That'll get some people's attention really quick. So like, that's what's fun is like testing this. And I'm glad Amazon's catching on because they introduced that. And you mentioned earlier, the manage experiments.
Right.
Touch on that a little bit. What exactly does that mean?
Yeah, so you can do 3 things currently, and I really, really, really want them to expand, especially with what I mentioned as far as who is it owns them? Jungle Scout, I think, owns Splitly, and I guess they're shutting it down. I don't know who they're replacing it with, or who else is going to be out there. But I know with Amazon Experiments, we use that one quite a bit because that's true A/B split testing. That's the way it should be done, is that you're doing a round robin where every other shopper gets a different image or a different title or a different A+. I would focus primarily, you can do the main image, you can do the title, and you can do A+ content. That's it right now, right? I want them to roll out bullet points. I want them to roll out subsequent images and videos, right? Videos is a whole additional topic here, but I would say the very first step, so many people say, oh, I need to get my A+, that's going to be, working. It's like, no, that's the last thing you need to work on. The first thing you need to work on is, did you even get them to your store? If you've got products that get 1,000 sessions or less in a month, you're invisible on Amazon. You are just, people don't find you. Amazon's not showing you, and it's probably too expensive to correct it through advertising. Yeah, you can get some visibility through advertising, but frankly, you probably need to pare it down and go for a tighter niche. Some people translate it as long tail. The 4, 5, 6 keyword kind of focus. But if you focus on that first, and win that battle, then you can start upping your game and start going against the big boys who have 5,000 reviews and that kind of stuff. But the point on that is you've got you can use the split testing as far as the main image, and I would say do at least 4 week like a 4-week split test. And so this is something where you don't just do it once. If you're going to do A/B split testing with Amazon Experiments, you have to be brand registered to do it. But if you're going to do it, make it a perpetual process. Every 4 weeks, you've got a new experiment that you're running out. As soon as you figure out, A/B testing is basically saying, like, I'm going to compare image A with image B, and I'm going to see which one creates the more conversion rate. Now, I'm also looking to see, did my sessions increase over time by introducing this variation? Sometimes it's more subtle. I'm just looking for some kind of improvement. Amazon's not going to really report as far as like, oh, you had a 50% gain on your sessions, on your visits. But they are going to say conversion rate, right, and click-through rate and these kinds of things. Those are the signals that are going to tell me it's like, okay, image B that I introduced either worked better or it didn't work better. And sometimes, let's say you get a 0.5% or a 1% increase in your conversion rate. That's a win. Now do a B and C, C and D, D and E. Just keep on running it throughout the year. This time, a year from now, you're going to have a 5 to 10% increase in your conversion rate. Can you imagine what that's going to do to your profitability and how aggressive you can get with advertising and the rest of your marketing? But most brands are going to be too lazy. So if you are not the lazy one in your product niche, you have a competitive advantage you can jump on right now that everybody else is like, oh, that's just one new thing I need to learn. It's not that hard. But you can do your main image, you can do your title, and you can do A+. But A+ is we usually don't bother with A+ split testing until farther down, until we nailed the main image and the title.
I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to ask, how often are you going in and doing a refresh for your clients and for your products? on their images, because you go through this exercise and now you stand out from the crowd, but 4 months later, everyone looks like you again.
Yeah, exactly.
They know
that is a problem with being a trendsetter or innovator. Right. Is like, hey, I'm the one who, like, I've literally had this multiple times. I've literally had coaching clients say it's like, well, I don't know what to do. It's like everybody, I'm the one who created this product. I was the first to market. Everybody copied me. What do I do? Well, you need to change. Like, but everybody copied me. It's like, yeah. You innovated once before, you can do it again. It's like, and honestly, the way that the rule that I have when it comes to whether that is marketing, software, product listings, anything, is within 6 months, the competition has caught you. Mm-hmm. If you haven't planned to roll something out new every 6 months at a minimum, you're going to fall behind.
Mm-hmm. It's true. That almost killed me earlier on, and when I was starting this, is I didn't do that enough. And you learn, and you move on. But touch on, because this is another thing that I feel like is valuable for anybody who's listening, is I don't think the average seller understands how much value Amazon puts on the conversion rate or your unit session percentage, and how, if all the things that you're doing improve that, the impact on your advertising, you will probably have much lower cost per clicks. They'll show you, your advertising will perform way better and cheaper potentially if you do these things.
I would agree with that. I think there's a certain amount of speculation that we have to acknowledge in that, because Amazon simply doesn't give us enough data to confirm that. Like, we can make observations and we can say, like, we looked at, 500 different, brands or listings or whatever the case was. And we can make some conclusions that there's a pattern here. But ultimately, Amazon still, we're only working on partial data. So I would say, yes, absolutely. I do believe in that. I do believe that increased conversion rate is going to magnify your ability to rank on individual or multiple keywords. It's going to increase an increased conversion rate is going to reduce your ACoS in advertising, therefore increase your profitability. Some people, like our agency, our focus is on increasing and maximizing overall sales with profitability. Like, profit is our focus, not impressions like Amazon would do. But we also recognize, see, now I went and lost my thought here. We recognize is that there's not going to be, what was I going to say on that? Just totally lost my thought on it.
We're talking about the conversion rate.
Though.
It's leaving us hanging on brilliant knowledge.
Conversion rate ranking. Certainly, whether or not Amazon is going to show you first. It plays into a lot of different metrics. There's obviously multiple metrics other than just conversion rate that are going to contribute to cost per click and ad positioning and placement and some of these things. But conversion rate at the product listing level absolutely is going to have multiple benefits that are well worth investing in. It's not that difficult. I mean, secondarily, this is going to be the next year. We're going to see a lot more development of external traffic drivers. But I think that right now, the low-hanging fruit is stand out from the competition through advanced listing optimization, like doing it the way it should be done now to talk to the consumer, not just simply stuffing keywords. It's frustrating to see titles. It's both easy to kind of look at a niche and goes, well, that's an easy one, because everybody's saying it's like, oh, this product is for men, women, children, teens, all stuffed in their titles. Like, what are you doing? Good Lord.
That you brought up a good point right now, because this is an experiment I've been running a little bit. There's products that have multi-uses. Okay, that can be multi-use. And I've experimented launching separate SKUs of the same product, but attack the one use. Like,
yes.
And it's
big
working.
Believer in that, yes.
I mean, as opposed to because like we talk about, you confuse somebody or you lose them. They're like, when you start listing all the attributes, they're like, does it really do all those things? And I just want it for this one thing.
Yeah, and that's something I see quite a bit. It's like, we'll like a formulation will have different flavors, and the title will show like, here's all the flavors that are. It's like, or here's some accessories that go along with that, and they'll put the product as a child underneath a parent just so they can adopt the review count.
Yeah.
But then they basically confuse the shopper. It's like what am I getting? Because they have things like a statement like, it's either this product or this other product. It's like, what?
Which one is it?
And you can get away with that for a short period of time, because until you get your own reviews on the individual child product. But at some point, you've got to break those out. The multi uses and the multi audiences definitely play in. I definitely, there's a lot of times what I'll do is I'll look at products where I can take over a niche, and then I think it's like, okay, who else would really use this? I like to travel with my family in an RV. I might look at one product and say, this is being sold to this particular audience currently. But if I were to basically come out with a listing that was specifically focused on the needs of solving problems for those who own RVs, for instance, who go out traveling on the road, that's a whole new audience that I own now, because nobody else is solving that problem for that audience. So you can basically create your own. We have shirts within our company called Category King or Category Queen. And that's basically just the concept of like being the 800-pound gorilla, dominating your category by basically getting all these things right. And that's something that our agency, that we're a fan of doing that for clients. But the point on that is that you can either compete head to head with the existing 800-pound gorillas, or you can make your own target audience and focus more narrowly. Yes, it is more work. Yes, there's a cost involved with packaging and these kinds of things. But ultimately, you could use the same packaging and maybe use a different version than maybe you're selling two different ones. You don't want to use the exact same image. Otherwise, Amazon is going to say, it's like, well, this looks like the exact same thing, same image, same content. No. Do enough different where you're using a different kind of image, different title, different content, so that you're speaking to a very specific target audience, and you're likely going to own most of the keyword rankings for that smaller, more niche within a niche, right?
We've talked a lot about listings. We talked a lot about optimization. Your bread and butter, obviously, is PPC. That's where
Sure.
a lot of people know you from. Let's just go in there for just a little bit here. Where do you see that area moving to? I mean, literally, like the last 18 months, Amazon has been feature after feature after feature after feature. Like new things are coming out like crazy.
Yep.
2 years ago, 3 years ago, it was like you'd be lucky to get a feature. Where do you think it's headed? Where do you see the vision with Amazon with PPC?
So the big ones that I can point out right now would be there's going to be more of a blending between demand side platform, DSP, and native PPC advertising. In other words, some of the features they're going to continue to carry over. Now they'll continue to add on new features to DSP for enterprise brands. Our agency manages DSP in-house too for our clients. But we see where more and more where in sponsored display ads, for instance, in the native PPC, they're starting to add on, they're kind of trickling features in. And I think that they're doing that intentionally to kind of say, it's like, oh, well, here's the new version of iPhone kind of thing. It's like, and it has a shinier camera on it. It's the same kind of concept, that they're doing, it's that perpetual marketing. Another area I definitely see is because Amazon is introducing more of the incremental time where they're starting to report on an hourly basis. Now they're reporting impressions and clicks and spend on an hourly basis, but they're not necessarily saying, oh, here's this attributed sales on the hourly basis. So a lot of people thought initially it's like, oh, well, that's going to make, split testing or day parting and week parting viable. It's like, no, not yet. Not technically. I mean, you can still test it, but it's still just limited to the data that Amazon provides. But here's where I think that's going to do that incremental. And it's not like you need to change bids throughout the day. on the same keyword. I don't know if Solozo does that. I know Metrics hangs that out as their banner, and I think they're full of it. I mean, I love the people within Tika, but that one from a marketing standpoint, it's like, come on, guys. Like,
yeah, I mean, everybody has the same data, like the same opportunity.
Yeah.
But I mean, but what I see in that is that the more immediate incremental data, as long as Amazon gets the data consistent and they can actually deliver it, and they don't, the data is relatively accurate, which has always been a challenge, that we're going to see a lot more split testing in ads. That's obviously going to be where, a platform, an AI-driven platform, is going to have a real benefit, is that you can, if you're essentially split testing, you're turning on and off campaigns from one day to the next or 1 hour to the next, and you're truly doing native split testing of those different campaigns, like placement, same targets, same products, same bidding strategy, but maybe the placement is different between two, and you're basically split testing between those two. I think we're going to see a lot more of that come up in the platforms. I love machine learning and AI. I do, I have a team that actually develops this kind of stuff too, but I am still not a fan of it when it comes to Amazon advertising, mostly because what I see barking the most are the platforms that rely entirely on it. They have no intervention by the seller to understand the marketplace or understand the seasonality, or that there's COVID going on, or there's no human interaction. It's got to be a blend of the two. Otherwise, it's going to just run off and do its own thing.
We talk about that all the time. I mean, that's anybody who's using Solozo successfully, they understand their goal and their strategy of what they're trying to do, and then they're able to implement it through there. I agree totally. It's the blend is where it's at right now for sure.
Yeah, and the reality is the marketplace has a lot of lazy sellers, who want to just hand it off to somebody and just have them run the business so that they can do something else. And I understand the compulsion to do that. It's like, I don't want the learning curve. I want somebody who's smarter than me to go do it. I understand the need for that. Obviously, that's one of the reasons I'm in business. But at the same time it's frustrating sometimes to see where a brand is truly struggling to make ends meet because they're not willing to do the minimum work necessary in order to be on Amazon.
Agreed.
It's tough to see, and there's a lot of it out there, and they give up too easily, and they just hand it off, and then they get frustrated when it's like, man, I just spent $5,000 on this, service or this consultant, and I didn't get anything for it. It's like, were you involved in the process?
Yeah.
No. Oh, okay. Well.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. Man, I love talking to Amazon. We could talk about this all day long.
Yes,
we need to get you back on in the future, because there's a million topics to talk about. So we'd have to get you back on for sure. This has been really fun.
I love that. Yeah, it's definitely, I think, depending on what conferences you guys end up going to too, obviously we need to, break out.
Oh yeah, we'll do that. We'll do that for sure. Well, for anybody,
Amazon geeks in a room, and
I love it. We missed out on Prosper, and we're kicking ourselves. Did you go to Prosper?
I did. Yeah, we actually had a booth there. We actually had great traffic to our booth. The content, what was on stage, not so much. But that's because it's a new company that took over. They took it over from
what's his name? Buy Boxer.
Yes, Buy Box Experts. So they took it away from Buy Box Experts, and they didn't really. They're booth promoters. They're not Amazon enthusiasts, so they didn't really know who to have speaking on stage. And so the content, you go in there, it's like, I'm not interested in any of these topics.
Yeah.
Again, but that was kind of what I was kind of bringing up before. Chris, when you brought up earlier, it's like, yeah, you're out there and you go to a store or something like that, or you see a listing, it's the same kind of concept. It's like, you're not speaking to me as far as what's in it for me. You're not grabbing my attention. You're making me work for it. You see that on, the title of a presentation at Prosper has got to be compelling enough so I actually care enough to actually attend the session. Now, whether or not I get value out of it is not the point. You got to get them in the seat first, right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
I had a conversation one time at a Home Depot where a guy was selling like air conditioners or water purifiers or something like that on one of the end caps, and he was a fairly young sales guy, and his attempt was like, hey, can I get your opinion about about the way I'm displaying this? He was obviously just trying to get somebody to stop, look at his presentation so that he could sell them. And my comment was, it's like, it's all wrong. And he's like, what? I'm like, it doesn't grab my attention compared to all the other end caps in here. There's too much information. I can't even pass by and have something catch my attention. It's like, I want that. Let me stop and look at it. You were forced to grab my attention because the end cap couldn't do it itself. Came back 2 weeks later and the end cap has completely changed.
That's probably what you needed to hear.
Yeah. And he didn't even get a consulting fee out of the deal.
Yeah,
no, I know. He was nowhere to be seen, but the end cap.
That's right. So I don't know. Oh, that's so funny. Well, real quick, for anybody who's listening and they love what you're talking about, they love all the things and they want to work with you. How can they get in touch with you so that they can stand out from the competition?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of this stuff is let me just kind of start with this. So on my, I've got a Facebook group for the Amazon Ppc Troubleshooting, but it has some links to it. I do have a YouTube channel for Brian R. Johnson. One of the videos I just put up there recently is basically a case study of going through a product niche. I think that's the cake decorating one, or maybe it's another one, but I go through my process as far as like how I view it. Now, there's a lot more that needs to be done, and it's not as easy as like, oh, well, okay, I went through the checklist, but the checklist really kind of identifies, do I have a problem I need to solve right now? And so for anybody, they can go out there and they can watch that case study on my YouTube channel as far as standing out from the competition or differentiation. And they can do it themselves. No, there's no cost, right? To actually just care about your customer and do it yourself. But you need to start doing something, right? And now's the time to do it. If they truly feel it's like, you know what, I'm not at the level where I could probably afford to have an agency do it for me, because obviously, I mean, I work for Canopy Management. We are a phenomenal Amazon-centric, people-centric, Amazon-focused marketing and advertising agency for Amazon sellers, but not all brands qualify to work with us. Mm-hmm. So certainly the larger brands that have teams, obviously you do want to have a conversation with my Canopy Management team, canopymanagement.com. My marketing team would kill me if I didn't even mention that, right? I also, of course, do coaching. I don't really advertise that, but I also do kind of like do it with you type of coaching that is probably more appropriate for those who want to learn it themselves. I've taught teams within brands. It's like how, what my process is. They can certainly reach out to me. I'm not that hard to find, I don't think, but yeah. So I think there's some different options depending on where somebody's at with their brand. I don't need to sell them anything. I just want them to take the time to try to solve it themselves first. If they need help, great, I can help.
We put a link in the description there, so there's a link also people can check out.
Yeah,
fantastic, perfect.
Yep, we got it there, and yeah, everybody, you got to check out his content. I mean, it's phenomenal. Well, I love the videos you produce. Learn a lot, so I encourage everyone to absolutely check that out.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Tons of fun. Thanks for joining us. It's been
absolutely I enjoyed this a lot. You guys are awesome.
We just like talking about it. It's fun. Yeah. And the questions are genuine because as sellers
they come from us.
we're asking questions we want the answers to. Yeah, thanks so much. Really, we really appreciate it. And thanks everyone for tuning in and listening. If you like content like this, if you like hearing from amazing people like Brian talk about all things Amazon, make sure you subscribe to our podcast. You can also find us when we live stream it. We live stream it to Solozo's Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube channels. So make sure you go there, subscribe to those as well. You can turn on notifications so you get notified when we go live, and you can watch our conversations that we have. So anyway, thanks everybody for tuning in. Thanks, Brian, for joining us, and we'll see everybody next time. Have a good one.